Today, what I'd like to do is speak a message on an Easter message. And what I'd like to call it is the resurrection, a natural moment or historical and legally verifiable event. A historical and legally verifiable event. In other words, I'd like to talk about the fact that there is evidence for the resurrection. Indeed, keeping in mind people that don't believe either in Jesus or the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. So when I'm speaking to the person that has a hard time believing that somebody could be raised from the dead. And so I'm going to bring out some proofs that I think would be helpful to our faith in the resurrection of Jesus from the grave. Proofs that would be helpful to our faith. The first thing we need to know is that in Hebrews 11:6 says, but those that come to God must believe that he is, and that he is a just rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So there's two movements in this verse. Movement number one is that to believe in God, first of all, you must have faith. You must have faith. You must believe. You must trust first. Second, since we are believers by faith, God will not leave our brain without rational proof to sustain the structure of faith. Is everybody listening? Because one thing is to believe, and then you have no proofs for your belief. Another thing is to believe, but you have arguments and evidence and proofs and documentation to sustain what you believe in. But God will not have man approach him only with his rational mind. Because the rational mind of man is not the do-all and end-all of knowing. We also know with our heart. That's why I like Spanish. The Spanish word for reason is razón. But the Spanish word for heart is corazón. Corazón, which means heart. Which means there's another reason that goes along with the rational reason. There's stuff that the heart knows that the mind doesn't know. Like when you fall in love with someone. You can't even figure it out. Poems have been written. Brian Wilson wrote songs, most beautiful love songs in the world. What a genius. He just can't explain it. In fact, in his song, I think one of the most beautiful love songs that's ever written has been written by the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson. God only knows. Remember that song? He don't even know why he loves that girl. He said, God only knows. Because why? Because the mind can't figure out the depth of the love that you have for your wife or for your fiance or for... They're just... He's ugly, but I love him. There's nothing becoming about the brother. But there's something about him. Ain't that right? You know, like you see a ugly man with a beautiful wife. You say, I don't know what I don't know what Rita sees in me. It ain't hair. I worked hard for this, so I'm going to wear it. I worked hard for it. I tell you the truth, when I was on the faculty, the graduate faculty at Fuller Theological Seminary, and we'd have these massive graduations, graduating PhDs in clinical psychology and theology and counseling and all that stuff. The graduations were so boring except for mine. And they were 3.5 hours long. So under this robe right here, I would take a novel by Louis L'Amour, a cowboy story. And then while everything was going on, I would just bring it out and just sit there and read. Sit there and read. And then if I heard one of my students' name go off like Dan Hudson, then I put the book down and I go, But what I want to talk about today is that very fact that there's the reason, but we don't approach God just with our reason. We have to approach God by faith. Even though we can't see him, we have to believe that the good Lord is there and he's got his hand in everything. People say, show me God, the first Russian cosmonaut said. Yuri Gagarin. I mean, he didn't even go to the moon. He went up 50 miles, and he looked out of his window, and he goes, where is God? Man, you got to go a little higher. At least, or you got to go a little deeper. Because you just didn't go 50, beep, beep, and where is God? Man, Yuri Gagarin. But we come to God first, and we believe, like the story in John. And here we go. John 20. Now the first day of the week, verse 1, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. From the tomb. Then she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved and said to them, they have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him. We do not know where they had laid him. Okay? And so you have to understand that when she said we, that's very important. The we there, that we is very important. Otherwise, you would think that Mary went there alone. But the other Gospels tell us that Mary went there. One Gospel said it was one lady. Then Matthew says one. And then Mark said it was two. It was Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Jesus. And then Luke tells us it was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Jesus, and the mother of James and John. So is everybody listening to me? Otherwise, you'd get confused reading the gospel stories thinking that they're contradictory. They're really not contradictory. It's part of what we call in New Testament studies the synoptic problem. And thank God that they all tell the story differently, because that makes it very normal and natural. I would be suspicious if all the gospels all told it the same way, which means they're trying to hoodwink us. They got together and smoothed everything out and then said, I'm glad that when somebody crashes into somebody and the police is getting the report from all the four corners of the intersection, you've got 5 different people saying, no, it's her fault. No, it's his fault. No, he was working on his cell phone. No, he wasn't. He was poking his nose and his hand got in his eyes and 4 of them. And so you understand that it's normal and natural for people to report an accident in different ways. And so it's natural for the Gospels to all report it in different ways. Matthew said it was Mary. John said it was Mary. And then, so on. And then Matthew says it was 2, and then Mark 3, and so on, and Luke 4, and so on and so forth. But this we right here, which says we do not know, of course, then that smooths it out, because it wasn't just Mary that went, it was other people that went. Is everybody listening to that? Amen. And then it says, we do not know where they have laid him. Peter therefore went out, and the other disciple and were going to the tomb. So they both ran together, and the other disciple outran Peter and came to the tomb first. Another gospel says that all the disciples came out. They're on their way there because she went and told all of them. And then Peter and John probably detached themselves from the group of the 12. Because for some reason or another, I can't even figure out what is it in John and Peter that made them so excited about running to the tomb. You follow me? What is it that stirred those two up? And the 11 are back there lollygagging along on their way to disbelieving what this former prostitute is saying about the tomb that's being empty. No. And so it says, together and the other disciple, and then outran Peter. So John outran Peter and came to the tomb first. And he stooped in and saw the linen cloths lying there, yet he did not go in. That's how some Christians are. We start out really good. We're running ahead of the whole group. You're on fire for Jesus here at church for a little while. Then all of a sudden, you won't go in. You get cold feet. And then there's other of us that, well, I don't know. We start out real slow. And then we start catching fire little by little. You walk out up to the tomb and then say, man, I'm going in. I'm pressing into Christ. So I like those better. And I like to see that, like, I'm one of the Peter kind that, I don't know about that, but you're coming to church and you're listening to Jesus. All of a sudden you walk right in to see what's going on and you become a part of what's happening. What kind are you? Then they saw the linen cloths lying there, yet he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen cloths lying there on the slab, and the handkerchief, or in Greek the sudarion, that which they wrapped around the head, that had been around his head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded together in a place by itself. How many of you organize like that, like Jesus? I'm very organized. I like my things in order. And if kids come and get my stuff, you better put it back the way you got it. Of course, they don't. They don't. I remember one time visiting Josh at Vero Beach. He was playing for the Dodgers, and he had so much fun. And I stayed with him in the room, him and his roommate, and I walked in, and I unpacked my luggage, hung my clothes. First thing you do when you go somewhere is unpack your clothes. Don't let them sit there and get wrinkled. Take everything out, hung it up, and then took my watch out and put it right there in order. I took my bracelet out, slipped there in order, my necklace in order, my colognes in order, my wallet in order, and my keys in order, and my change in a stack. Then I looked over to the side and I saw a watch in order, a necklace in order, a bracelet in order, a cologne in order, coins stacked, and a wallet in order. I go, doggone it, he's just like I am in some ways. Organized. That was so funny. And Jesus was very orderly about things. He always was like that. He was a very careful planner, if you remember who Jesus was. And what's interesting is this. I'll read the rest of the story, but we got to stop right there, because if you're a Catholic, don't be offended about what I'm got to say about some of the lies that go on in your church. One of it is there's this big deal that people go there and bow down to this handkerchief that's supposed to be the sudarion that was wrapped around Jesus' head and face. And supposedly, it's got I've seen it before. It's got like a scorched image of the face of Jesus on the cloth. Now, I was just thinking about this. I mean, if his image was on the cloth and it meant so much for them to describe the interior of the tomb the way it was, don't you think that they would have said something about that cloth that was wrapped up right there? I'm just thinking, no offense. Now, if his face was there, wouldn't that be further evidence? Man, at least it might have been like some kind of fourth dimensional radiation burn. So I'm just saying that the Shroud of Turin is suspect to me. No offense. I'm just saying. I'm reading the word. Don't you think the evangelists would have made a fuss about it? Come on, man. Now, you must come to God with faith, but then let's use our brain. All right? Let's go on from there. I won't take it back, but if I offended you, I ask you to forgive me. But think about what I said. Then the other disciple, that's John. He always calls himself the other disciple. He doesn't say me ever in his book. Who came to the tomb first, went in, and he saw, and what did he do? And believed. He put a foot forward. He came and he believed. Believed what? Believed that Jesus had arisen from the dead. Amen. Somebody say amen. Amen. And let me get, it's so wonderful when we look at each other and we say, we haven't seen any of that. I mean, I've been to the tomb a couple of times and it's still empty, but the clods aren't there. But what it's talking about here is that when they went in, then John saw what Peter saw, that it says linen cloth. We were having a little trouble this morning with the translation of linen cloth in the Easter sunrise service. One of our dear little brother Chuck was translating, but he didn't get it right. He said that Jesus was wrapped in savanas. That's where the word savannah comes from, savanas, that they wrapped Jesus up in bed sheets. But they did it, we had a good time over there. We're just having fun. But the linen cloths were the mummy cloth that the ancient Near Easterns used to wrap their bodies in. Did anybody ever see a mummy? Well, the Jews, they didn't wrap the head up. The Jews would put something on the head, but the rest of the body was wrapped up in strips of linen. You everybody understanding me? And even before they buried him, however, Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, who were very wealthy, extremely wealthy, secret disciples, but wealthy. We need wealthy disciples. If you're a secret disciple and you're wealthy, just keep giving tithes. I'm fine with it. Fine, I'll have no argument with that. You come and talk to me in the office and all that, but leave your offering. But see, they came, and when they took the body down from the cross, they purchased about 100 pounds of spikenard and aromatic unguents, aromatic creams that were very, very expensive, kind of like the stuff that Mary brought Jesus in the alabaster box. Remember that? It's expensive. The stuff she bought costed one entire year of her prostitute money. Think about that. That was a lot of hard work. But she brought that labor to Jesus and he didn't reject it. It's like when we bring all our filth and soiled lives and the sin of our minds and hearts to Jesus, he just takes it tenderly and he forgives us for everything that we've done. That's how Jesus is. How many of us have Jesus in our heart? And we walk with Jesus. And The linen cloth, then, when they brought that, when they talked Pilate, they were of influence because they talked the governor, the Roman governor, okay, who sent the centurion, in another story, to the cross to guard the three crucified men, Jesus being one. A centurion was a Roman soldier captain in charge of 100 soldiers, a century. In Latin, it's called centuria. And I want to tell you, if a centurion was at the cross, how many soldiers were there? 100. They were all watching this spectacle, including the ladies that loved Jesus, because the disciples had fled. That whole cohort of Roman soldiers was there, and their centurion believed that he was the Son of God. He was the first Gentile saved by Jesus, the crucified Lord. He said, truly, this man is the Son of God. All you guys says, confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, and you shall be saved, doesn't it? So he was the first one saved. And somebody say hallelujah. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that they took his body, everybody listening? And as a religious ritual, they didn't embalm him as such, but they did anoint his naked body with the expensive creams and ointments that they brought that weighed 100 pounds. Hello? How much did it weigh? Jesus was a big man, okay? Jesus was not a pipsqueak guy. He carried that cross. We learned at Good Friday here that he carried that cross the length of 2 football fields. And if you study Roman crucifixion, okay, the crossbeam weighs about 100 pounds. And the horizontal stipe, they call it a stipe, weighed 200. So he carried 300 pounds, the length of 2 football fields, before the first African Christian, Simon Niger, which means black, picked up the cross for him. And I believe he got saved on the way to Golgotha. Isn't that awesome? So Jesus was a big man. That's beside the point. I'm just saying, let's say he was 6'2". A Roman soldier had to be 6 feet even, or he could not join a legion. So Jesus might have been that tall or a little bit taller than that. The big man. And probably a good-looking man. Okay? Was a man's man. So there's our Lord. So they put this stuff on him. That's how the Jews did it. And then they wrapped the body multiple times with the linen strips, which it says here. Everybody paying attention? So now there was a rumor, and then there was a book written many years ago by an idiot named Hugh Schoenfeld, who was an unbeliever, who tried to make a mockery of his burial, and said that his ultimate conclusion was that someone stole the body. Okay? So I always say this, someone stole his body. But why are you going to steal the body? How are you going to get that big body out of all that goop and leave it lying there in its place? That's not how how people steal. Burglars, thieves, and robbers, they're not neat. I said this before, I tell you, has anybody's been broken into? Have you ever been broken into your home? Excuse me for saying this, but is your socks and chonies folded up really nicely right there where they was getting into your drawers? No. There's a mess everywhere. I've been broken into 2 times. Lord, finally we got, in case you're thinking about it, in case you're thinking about going to get this cross carrying on here, we got an alarm system now. It's connected to Donald Trump. He might drop one of them Moabs on you if you come over to my house, man. He might drop some massive ordinance on you. Come on now. Let me preach. Did somebody let me preach today? Let me preach right now, church. With your permission, I'm just saying, burglars aren't neat. Just the fact that they said they saw the linen cloth lying there, wrapped around, is what they saw was a caved-in cocoon. Something like that. With the goop inside. But nobody. And then John noticed that the napkin was folded up nicely in its place, just like Jesus. Because he had been given a heavenly robe of white that he was wearing. Now, later on it says right here that Mary did not recognize him. Everybody see that? Mary did not. I said that. I want to say that again. She said, Mary stood outside and by the tomb, 11, crying as she wept. She stooped down and looked into the tomb, and she saw 2 angels in white sitting, one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they said to her, see, here's what John does. He does a Hebrew thing. He says the beginning of the event at the end. Because really, he's talking now about Mary went first and saw what was going on, and then she saw the angels there, and she got scared. If you combine the gospel stories together, she didn't go in. She just looked in, got scared, saw the angels, and said, I'm out of here, and went running back to tell the disciples the body's gone. And they didn't believe her. And the angels said to her, why are you weeping? By the way, angels means messengers. She said to them, because they've taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him. Now when she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, and did not know that it was Jesus. Everybody listening? And Jesus said to her, woman. Only Jesus could have said woman the way he said it to her. Have you ever had anybody say that, man, that voice, like this morning over at Easter sunrise? There was a wonderful believer that used to come here, don't come here no more, but that was her service she went to. And I went up to her and I spoke her name to her, and he goes, that voice. She knows the voice of her shepherd. And Mary knew the voice of the man that forgave her sins. How could she not? But she didn't recognize him. And here's another thing I said last year, I'll say it again. The reason why is because Jesus' face was not stylized. Right? I mean, you know, after he arose, those bumps and bruises, those cuts, those black eyes, that broken nose, his face must have been swollen from the beatings that he took. Multiple beatings. Somebody said between Friday night when they beat him and abused him and carrying the cross to the next day, he must have been beaten and abused 3,000 times. Because his flesh was just torn off of his body by the cat o' nine tails with bone shards on the end of the straps. She didn't recognize. And then on the road to Emmaus, the disciples that were on the road to Emmaus at the end of Luke chapter 24, they didn't recognize him either. And I would suggest the same thing of our Lord. His lips were swollen. Eyes were bruised, nose. He was beat. Later on, Thomas, when he saw Thomas still didn't believe, and Jesus walked right through the wall. I mean, we see that all the time in the movies now. because he had a higher understanding of the laws of physics. He was a genius in terms of physics. So as a super genius, I mean, he could coordinate gravity. He could coordinate the structure of atoms and molecules to walk through it. He was a super genius. That wasn't hard for someone that lives in anything outside of the third dimension, that understands multiple dimensions. And I mean, we're stuck in the fourth dimension. And I mean, we're barely discovering quarks and neutrinos and super quarks and dark matter from that cyclotron out there in CERN, Switzerland. I mean, we're like babies playing around with microscopes. But here's a man that understood how his body could go through wood, plaster, by just arranging molecules and atoms in a certain way. That's another story. The point is that she couldn't recognize him, and that's another reason to believe. Jesus said, "Why are you crying? Who are you looking for?" I want to ask you that today. Who are you looking for? You know, are you looking for a boyfriend? Are you looking for a girlfriend? Are you looking for something that will satisfy the deepest need in your life? Are you looking for something and you haven't found it yet? Well, I'll tell you what. Are you paying attention, man? Thanks. I'll tell you what. You got to look for Jesus first. And Jesus will satisfy the deepest longing of your life. Then everything else will come along. Well, those are some things that I'd like to share with you that seem to me to be evidences and proofs. I had a whole list of them right here. I'm not going to read them all. Another thing is this. A lot of people say, "Prove it to me." That we're influenced by the scientific method in our university systems and in our colleges and in our high schools. I mean, even history teachers start trying to teach biology by saying God doesn't exist. They should just stick to history. English teachers stepping out of line and talking to our students and telling them God doesn't exist. They should stick to English. And scientists try to explain, some of them now, more than anything, physicists are allowing a place for God. Because it'll be a super long time before anybody knows everything about the universe. Basically, we're stupid. But stupid people can do a lot of things. They may build rockets. So what I'm trying to say is this, that there's sufficient proof right here that will stand up in a court of law. Because in a court of law, you only need how many witnesses to establish a case? 2, actually. If you got 3 or more, then is that better for you? For your case? Absolutely. But how many saw the risen Lord and touched him and ate with him and walked with him and listened to him and loved him and tried to get a hold of him, like Mary Magdalene, when she saw and she recognized that it was Jesus? It says that she got him from the feet and was hanging on. And he said, "Woman, let go of me. I'm not going anywhere. It's not time for me to go to my Father yet." And he hung around for 40 days. And during those 40 days, Thomas was able to push his fingers inside the opening on his side, which by that time he had a glorified body, no blood needed. He said, "Thomas, come here." Thomas walked up to me. He goes, Don't be an atheist, but be a believer. He pulled up his gown. He says, put your hand in the side. What? But the word right there is balo, which means throw your hand, thrust your fingers in the side, and believe. And it blew Thomas away. He went zoop, zoop, dropped on his knees and started slobbering on the ground and said, my Lord and my God, capital G. The resurrection of Messiah from the dead proves to us that he's worthy of worship. He's worthy of all praise. He's worthy of all honor. He's worthy of all glory. Jesus is our God.